Today I'll be showing you how to set up a shrimp tank. As we start, remember there are three different types of shrimp. We will be setting up a Neocaridina Shrimp Tank, a Caridina Shrimp Tank, as well as a Sulawesi Shrimp Tank. Do your research on what type of shrimp you want to keep before setting up a tank for them. Neocaridina shrimp are easy to keep and is recommended for any new person in the hobby. Caridina shrimp are more advanced and requires a more extensive knowledge about the hobby and water parameters. And lastly, Sulawesi shrimp are more at an expert level, but they are very easy once you understand the basics. You need to find out what shrimp you have or what shrimp you want to keep in order to set up the right environment for them. So let's start. There are a few things that all three tanks have in common, which is a filter and a heater. Let's first explain what they do. A filter, or in other words a shrimp safe filter, is the ecosystem of your tank and is basically the most important part. You see, as you feed your shrimp, most of the food will be eaten and some might be left over. Essentially, your shrimp will poop and the poop will cause ammonia to be released in the water. The uneaten food will also start producing ammonia as soon as 2 hours after feeding. Remember, ammonia is toxic to your livestock. It will kill your shrimp. Your filter's job is to grow bacteria inside of the pores of the sponge. As the water passes through the sponge or the filter, the bacteria colony that has grown will break down the ammonia into nitrites. And eventually those nitrites will also be broken down into nitrates. Nitrates is a lot safer for your livestock than ammonia or nitrites. So once again, the filter is the ecosystem of your tank and is extremely important. But how do you get the bacteria inside of your filter to get the ecosystem going? There are many ways to cycle your tank. You can do some research on cycling your tank, but my number one product is Seachem Stability. With this, you don't have to wait the 2 to 6 week period to cycle your aquarium. After 1 week of dosing this, your tank should be ready to add limited quantities of shrimp. The bacteria in the bottle will cultivate your filter and will get the ecosystem going. Generally, sponge filters will work best for shrimp. If your sponge filter has one of these, you can add another type of biological filtration like Seachem Matrix. So now that you have a sponge filter and know what it does, you can connect it to an air pump using air tubing. Just remember to add your non-return valve to stop the water from running back into the pump. This little one-way valve will make sure all the air can go from the pump to the filter, but that no water can run back into your pump and harm your electronics. Next up, we have a heater. A shrimp's ideal temperature is around 21 to 23 degrees. Shrimp can survive far outside of these water parameters, but they are much more comfortable at between 21 to 23 degrees. So add a heater and switch it to 21 degrees. If your tank drops below 21 degrees Celsius, the heater will switch on and will keep your tank above 21. Please remember that your shrimp can't tell you if they are cold. They might look fine, but they don't have a closet where they can go and grab a jersey. They are dependent on you. So do the responsible thing and look after your shrimp. For Caridina and Neocaridina shrimp, you can set your heater to 21 degrees. Sulawesi shrimp require a temperature of between 28 and 29 degrees. So this heater will set to 28 degrees. Now that we've added the filter and the heater to all three of these tanks, we can go ahead with the substrate and gravel. For Neocaridina tank, any soil that will not alter the pH will work great. Anything that is inert that does not contain heavy metals. This is a list of some of the inert substrates that are readily available from all over the world, from the cheapest to the most expensive. Examples are pool filter sand, black diamond blasting sand, lava rock, JBL Monado, and Seachem fluorite. Just rinse your Neocaridina substrate properly and make sure you don't add a layer of more than 1 centimeter to avoid anaerobic pockets. We are going to add some back to 100 to each of these tanks. Now back to 100 is not always necessary. but it does help a lot to create the ideal substrate environment a lot quicker. We prefer using JBL, Monado or Lava Rock for Neocaridina tanks, so today we're going to use JBL Monado. For the Caridina tank, substrate is a lot more complex. You see, Neocaridina shrimp require a pH of above 7. With general tap water and an inert substrate that we spoke about earlier, these shrimp generally do well. But Caridina shrimp require a lower pH. That's why you need a special soil for Caridina shrimp. What makes the soil so special? Well, it's made from clay. Clay has a low pH value. When you add a clay-based substrate, it will keep the pH of the water lower and stable for extensive periods. The soils that I'm referring to are things like Akadama, ADA Amazonia, JBL Scaper soil, Longa, Protobio, or any other clay-based soil. In our case, we're using ADA Amazonia on top of a layer of Bacter 100. Please note that when you use active soils, please allow 4 to 8 weeks before you add your shrimp, even if you add a bacteria product like Seachem Stability. The back of the bags of these type of soils tell you not to add livestock for the first 2 weeks. This instruction is for fish, not shrimp. For shrimp, we recommend to let the tank run with the soil for at least 6 weeks, as shrimp are much more sensitive than fish and they need a more stable environment. Moving on to Sulawesi shrimp substrate. We have found that lava rock works the best as a substrate. You can use any inert substrate, but having lava rock has a massive benefit. Because it is very porous, it can grow bacteria. Remember, we want beneficial bacteria as it creates a stable environment. It means you'll have an even healthier tank. You can also use bigger pieces of lava rock for decor in the Sulawesi tank. This will give them more than enough hiding spaces. It will aid in general comfort for the shrimp as well. In our case, we're going to use lava rock on top of a layer of Bacter 100. You can go ahead and add the soil to your tank. Okay, so the soil is added. Now all we need to do is to add the water. This is where things get complicated. You need to understand water and water parameters before you keep shrimp. So please bear with me while I quickly try and explain this. There are 3 types of water that people will generally use. First of all is borehole or well water, which comes from under the ground. Second is municipal or tap water, which is cleaned by your local government or water company. And lastly, RO or RODI water, which is water that went through a filter system and then went through a reverse osmosis membrane. Let's make something very clear. Borehole water comes from under the earth and you have no idea how clean it is or what it consists of, and this vastly differs from place to place. Well water and borehole water must not be confused with spring water, which is something completely different. Spring water is actually much cleaner. Even if the borehole water tastes fine, it might not be clean. Generally, borehole or well water is extremely dirty on a chemical level, so we don't recommend using it for shrimp. Municipal or tap water, on the other hand, is cleaned by someone else. For an example, your local water company or government. And you as a shrimp breeder don't have any control over the purity of this water. Using something like Seachem Prime really does help in making the water fish safe, but it's still not 100% guarantee. That is why we recommend RO or RODI water. If you use RO water, the control lies in your hands. RO water is water that went through a filter and then went through an RO membrane. These systems are readily available. RO water is stripped of almost everything, but you cannot use RO water alone. You need to add back the calcium and magnesium that your livestock use, or so-called shrimp minerals or shrimp salts. These are the trusted shrimp minerals in the market at the moment. Use these when you remineralize your RODI water. There are 3 different ones, one for Neocaridina shrimp, one for Caridina shrimp, and one for Sulawesi shrimp. Please make sure you get the correct one. We understand that running water through an RO membrane to remove almost everything and then adding some minerals back sounds counterintuitive. But it's important to understand that this gives you control over the water. It removes impurities, and then you can add back the right amount of calcium and magnesium, and this way give your livestock the right environment and make it more safe for your pets. So if you're using the first 2, we recommend that you test your water before you use it. You'll need to test the pH, KH, and GH. If these parameters correspond with the ones in the graph, technically you can go ahead and fill up your tank and then hope for the best. But if you're serious about keeping shrimp and keeping them happy, healthy, and breeding, we highly recommend using RO water with shrimp minerals or shrimp salts. Now I know this was a lot of information, so let's summarize everything. For Neocaridina shrimp, you need a sponge filter, a bacteria starter, a heater that is set to 21 degrees, any inert substrate that is not more than 1 centimeter thick. You can use tap water at your own discretion, but remember to use CKM Prime or any dechlorinator with it. Alternatively, we recommend using RO water with Neocaridina shrimp salts. Let your tank run for 1 week. If your water tests 100%, add your shrimp. Do not overstock the tank. Add a few shrimp every week and keep an eye out on your ammonia and nitrite levels. For Caridina shrimp, you need a sponge filter, bacteria starter, a heater that is set to 21 degrees, any buffering substrate. The thicker the layer is, the lower your pH will generally be. So be careful not to add too much. A 1 centimeter layer of aqua soil should be more than adequate. RO water plus Caridina shrimp salts is a must. Remember, we don't recommend using tap water for Caridina shrimp at all. Let your tank run for 4 to 8 weeks. If your water tests 100% after this period, add some shrimp. Do not overstock in the beginning. Add a few shrimp every week and keep an eye out on your ammonia and nitrites. For Sulawesi shrimp, you require a sponge filter, bacteria starter, your heater that is set to 29 degrees, a lava rock substrate, larger rocks for hiding spaces as decor. RO water plus Sulawesi salts is a must when you want to breed Sulawesi shrimp. Let your tank run for 4 to 8 weeks. If your water tests 100%, add your shrimp. Do not overstock the tank and add a few shrimp every week. Keep an eye out on your ammonia and nitrite levels. This is very important. Remember, you need algae for a Sulawesi shrimp tank. Lots and lots of algae. Keep a strong light on the tank for longer periods to grow lots of algae. Remember, this algae must be growing in the tank before your shrimp goes in. One thing I do want to emphasize quickly, do not add shrimp to the tank immediately after you have added the water. Neocaridina shrimp tanks needs to run at least 1 week with the bacteria product in order for you to add shrimp safely. This will give the tank enough time for beneficial bacteria to cultivate your filter. Test your water before you add shrimp. Caridina shrimp also need that initial 1 week period to cultivate the bacteria in your filter. On top of that, the substrate will generally leach ammonia for the first 2 weeks into the water. We recommend letting this tank run for at least 6 to 8 weeks before you add your shrimp. If you have the patience, rather let it run the full 8 weeks. If you're using Akadama, you can just let the tank run for 1 week, as Akadama does not release nutrients. But that being said, it's always safer to leave the tank for at least 6 weeks when you're dealing with Caridina shrimp. Sulawesi shrimp also need that first week to run in order for beneficial bacteria to grow. But most importantly, you need to grow algae in this tank before you add the Sulawesi shrimp, as they're extremely picky eaters. Algae growth can take a very long time. The easiest way to grow algae is with a strong light for about 14 hours a day. That should greatly help. This will help all the shrimp settle in and eat well in the first week. And now for the fun part, adding the shrimp. You can use any of the following methods: the drip acclimation, or you can float the bag and add small amounts of water every few minutes. Or you can do the floating bag for 10 minutes and then plop and drop the shrimp. Each method has its own pros and cons, but you can do whatever you feel more comfortable with. You can add plants and decor at any time. Shrimp don't need them, but there are pros and cons to having things in your tank for the shrimp. So add them at your own discretion. I have added links in the description of all the items we have used today, which you can buy on Amazon. Just a quick warning or a tip, I see a lot of pet stores sell a buffering substrate for Neocaridina shrimp. It's not necessary. You only need it for Caridina shrimp. So we are actually not going to fill these tanks today. I know you're extremely disappointed, but the tanks are done, you just need the water. If you want to see us adding shrimp to a tank, we're busy with about 4 or 5 videos where we're actually going to add shrimp to a tank. But that's it for this video, guys. If this video sucked, you know what to do, but if it was awesome, get subscribed, press that like button, and check out our other videos. I hope you guys learned something today, and as always, keep it shrimpable.